Am I the butthole for telling someone their kid will leave them? My mom has a friend and they have a 13-year-old girl, let's call her Jane, who looks up to me. We're both the eldest girls in immigrant families. Recently, Jane and her mom have been fighting. Her mom says Jane is always on her phone, her grades are falling, and she isn't doing as well as she should be. Jane comes to me, crying, stressed about the pressure her mom is putting on her. Everyone in her household sides with her mom, and she's never felt more isolated from her own family. I told Jane that communication is important, where both sides are heard. Jane tells me that when they talk, her mom talks over her, and Jane starts crying so much she can't get a word out. Her mom wants the best for her, including good grades to get scholarships for good colleges. However, Jane tells me this pressure is too much and no matter what, they can't have a proper conversation because it's always her mom taking control, just as how she does with everything. So, with Jane's permission, I talk to her mom for her. Me. Jane feels like there's a lot of pressure on her, too much. She feels almost unsafe talking to you because she's scared of you. She feels like everything she's doing is for you, not for her. The first thought on her mind when she gets a test result is, I hope mom is happy about this, not, I'm proud of myself. She says she never feels proud because it feels like you're just constantly raising the bar for her. It's unrealistic, and you need to remember she's just a kid. Jane's mom. I worked hard to build this life for her, and it would be wasteful if she spent it all on her phone. If I didn't encourage her to do well, she would do worse. It's simple. I pay for extra tutoring, buy all the supplies she wants and needs, and I make sure she's rested enough to study well. I want her to live a good life, and that starts with good education. I don't expect you to understand it yet anyway. You're young and not a mother yet. You have no right to tell me how to raise my kids, so keep yourself out of my family's business. You don't live in our house, so how would you know the real story and not the fabricated one she told you? If she has a problem, she needs to learn how to talk to me about it. She has no reason to be scared, and at her age, I'm sure she's saying that for attention or to be dramatic. Am I the butthole for not wanting to wear an I love my girlfriend t-shirt? I, 20M, have been with my GF, 21F, for nearly 2 years now, and something she likes to ask or bring up from time to time is if she got me an I love my girlfriend t-shirt, would I wear it? It's usually just me saying probably not generally because I feel it draws attention or is loud and don't usually dress like that. Also, I think it just feels sort of possessive over me in a not so good way, but bottom line is I just don't want to and feel like that should be enough explanation when it comes to my own clothing. Most of the time it just ends in her getting a little upset and it getting dropped later, but last night when she asked and I tried to explain my side, she got really upset and nearly started crying, saying she just wished I would want to wear something like that without any gripes because I love her and wouldn't care what people think. I do love her, but I don't believe I'm required to wear a shirt to prove that. It feels a little childish to me. Now I feel pressured to wear something I don't really want to wear, and don't think that it is necessary for me to wear to show that I love her. Am I the butthole for telling her no when she asks if I would wear the shirt? I feel like I'm not, because I should be able to decide what I can and can't wear, but I could be wrong.
Am I the butthole for telling my husband that I will no longer participate in family vacations if his ex is present? Here's the background. While on a study abroad, my husband Robert got his foreign girlfriend Elizabeth pregnant. Their relationship was rocky, and they've been broken up since Tim was about 1. I met Robert when their son Tim was 3 years old. Robert and I have now been together 13 years. When I met Robert, he was upfront that Tim always comes first, and unfortunately is a package deal with Elizabeth until Tim is old enough for solo international travel. This was unfortunate because at that time Robert and Elizabeth hated each other. My parents-in-law have always paid for plane tickets for Elizabeth and Tim to visit. Elizabeth and Tim usually visit for 2-3 weeks every year. Robert always requested my presence for these visits to build a relationship with Tim and, at least the first few years, for moral support dealing with Elizabeth. Elizabeth has mostly been nice to me, although it's very superficial. We are not friends. She's fine with the in-laws because they're very nice people who just want a relationship with their grandson and would never jeopardize that access. Robert and Elizabeth's relationship gradually improved, and by the time Tim was 7, they were on friendly terms. Being required to spend 2-3 weeks every year staying in the same house as my husband's ex has always been at minimum uncomfortable for me, at times extremely difficult and painful. But I tolerated it without complaint, without fully expressing how hard it was, because I felt that my main job here is to support Robert. I've been holding out for the goalpost Robert identified early on, that when Tim is old enough to travel alone, presumably Elizabeth will no longer come with. Well, that time has arrived. Tim is 16, traveled alone to visit last summer, and it was awesome. However, Elizabeth said she wants to come visit again this year and continue doing so every other year. No end date stated. My parents-in-law will never stop paying for plane tickets and never suggest Elizabeth not come. In fact, 2 years ago, prior to Tim's first solo trip, they assured Elizabeth that she is always welcome even after Tim is an adult, that she is family too. Events like that have amounted to death by 1,000 cuts, in which I've been experiencing serious depression surrounding Elizabeth's visits. I feel like that goalpost I was holding out for has vanished entirely. So I told Robert that I will no longer be present for the full family vacations when Elizabeth comes. I will hang out for 1 or 2 weekends only. He knows I'm fully on board with vacations that do not include Elizabeth though. He is hurt, says my lack of presence shows everyone, including Tim, that I don't care. Am I the butthole for not telling my former fiancé I bought her dream house? 10 years ago, my fiancé left me a few weeks before our wedding. We grew up in a small town, went to the same school, but were never in the same clique. A few years later, I moved back home when my dad got sick. I found a job about 45 minutes away and ran into my ex at the hospital where she worked. We started dating and things were going great. We moved in together and I proposed. We began looking for a house and she always wanted to live in her grandparents' house on the lake. Unfortunately, her family had to sell it due to an inheritance dispute. But 6 months before our wedding, I managed to buy her dream house as a surprise wedding present. I didn't tell her or anyone in her family about my plans. However, a month before our wedding, she confessed that she was afraid to get married and wanted to call it off. She later moved to Florida and married her high school boyfriend. I moved back to the city for a great job, but I still had the lake house. With the help of my parents, we fixed it up, and I now live there full time. This summer, my sister-in-law used photos from the lake house in her Christmas card, which made its way to my ex's cousin. Now my ex's mother and sister have approached me with an offer to buy the house, but I refused. My ex then contacted me, calling me an ass for keeping the house from her. Her family is blaming her for losing the house again, and they want me to sell it. But I have no intention of selling. Now they're complaining on social media, accusing me of seeking revenge. Am I the butthole?